So I always tell people that we'll see what kind of good trouble we can get into together. So take that for however you will. Well, so much exciting new music is being workshopped here at the Banff Centre for the Arts and Creativity. At the same time, a beloved work that it will be turning 300 years old will be getting a bit of a makeover here this week. That work is J.S. Bach's St. Matthew Passion. 8 singers, I'm looking at them to confirm that my numbers are right, are taking this work on in a performance this week. And those performances are being led by Suzie LeBlanc and Alex Weimann from Early Music Vancouver. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me, you guys.
Thank you.
So first of all, as you grab the mic there, perhaps somebody can, maybe I'll start with you, Alex. How about that? When you are being approached by the Banff Centre to say, hey, we're taking this kind of project on, what sorts of things were going through your mind as you were planning this workshop?
Oh, the story behind that workshop is actually rich and a little complicated, and the workshop is actually a second step, if I remember that right, out of a series of meetings and gatherings and soul searching between Suzie, Joel, Avani, and I, and we searching and exploring options for that piece. We managed to be invited here, and it was just a wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So obviously, it's just 8 singers, Suzie involved in the workshop. How have these rehearsals while you've been here at Banff looked, and what has been the approach that you've taken to this immense work with such a small cast?
Yeah, because it's a workshop, it's a small cast, and of course it was also a workshop that was decided a little bit at the, not last minute, but later. So there was no question that we could get orchestras here. So we thought we would work only with singers and continuo. The reason also is that we're not just exploring the music, we're exploring the idea of staging a Matthew Passion. And so the principal thing you want to have is at least, you know, some of everything and the singers there. And so that, you know, the small, flexible cast, but it wasn't that easy to pick which excerpt you're going to do. The St. Matthew Passion is way too long for a 2-week workshop, especially in a staging thing, and we didn't have the orchestras. So Alex went through the score, maybe he can tell you more about that, to pick certain, elements that made sense, because it is a performance as well tomorrow night, and at the same time that we could work on. Do you want to say a bit about that?
Yeah, let's hear a bit more about like how when you go through the score and as you're analyzing kind of which pieces can be portrayed in a workshop setting, but also for a staged setting, which is something that's pretty rare when it comes to the Passions. What sorts of things are you looking for in the music to fit those criteria?
One of the beautiful features of the Matthew Passion is that it's grouped in 2 orchestras, or 2 choirs plus orchestra. Therefore, that number 8. So it's basically 2 times 4. 2 sopranos, 2 altos, 2 tenors, 2 basses. And that's sort of the bare minimum that you really need. And with that in mind, and the idea that then each of those singers would get a solo moment, that it is all sort of held together by the narration, so the role of the evangelist. That was basically the point where I went from, and I believe we came to about 70 or so minutes, 75 minutes perhaps of music.
Still quite
18 numbers from Matthew Passion.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So then you mentioned this before. We talked about the staging component of this, Suzie. What sorts of considerations, when you think about these Passions, works that you both have quite a lot of experience in, what sorts of new sorts of factors are you then considering for the performance of the Passions if you're adding staging into the mix, which is something that Bach did not have in mind?
Probably not. This is why we're here in a way. The workshop is about trying to find out how can you stage a Matthew Passion? What do you do with it? But there's an element in this particular workshop which is important to say, which is that we're also, this was in discussion with Joel Ivany, of course, decided that the original language of the Matthew Passion is German, and we added the two national languages of Canada, so there are excerpts in French, excerpts in English, and excerpts in German. It just so happens that I'm a Francophone, Alex Weimann comes from Germany, and Joel is... So we have all three specialists in those three languages, which is kind of just interesting. We didn't even think about that when we made the decision. But so that's already something that we're dealing with it, that there's sections that are happening in French and then somebody answers in German, you know. So that's really interesting, and we had to find good translations. We did find a beautiful translation of the French of the Passion that was done in the 19th century. Though it's beautiful, it's from the 19th century.
Sure, so the language maybe is a little bit outdated.
Religiously very different, very passionate, very dramatic. So those are also things that have changed the piece for us, and that we're working with the singers. So, there's so much you of course, like you say, you don't necessarily have a set and, things you carry. It's not an opera, but there's so much that you can do with the storytelling. And it's a great story. It's extraordinary, and it goes deep, deep into the emotions. And so that's what we're working on with the singers, how to make the stories personal to yourself, how to fit them in our 21st century. And that is a work that is really, really fantastic. It's so exciting.
Yeah, Alex, maybe you can speak a little bit to how the languages that are being added into this performance then maybe add different nuance to the musical perspective of the St. Matthew Passion.
Absolutely. The relationship between text and music is at the core, right, of Bach's artistry. And it's a little difficult to put in words, but if you think of plays and theater, I actually don't know the English word for that, but Bertolt Brecht, the German, he brought that element of Verfremdung, it's in German, so making it strange, making it artificial, and therefore break the illusion.
Sure.
And I think that's actually an interesting aspect in that, because if you think about the Matthew Passion, any Passion actually, sacred piece, in terms of theater, what is it? What form is it really? It's not that easy. It's not like the illusional theater where you like cinema, right? Where you forget reality and you're kind of even in Bach's environment, the performance of the Matthew Passion would have something of a service, right? Of a communal performance, if that makes sense, and that creates its own reality.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think it's actually helpful to break the habit of one language and to experience it as a piece that is challenging, because the story is extraordinary and it's not harmless.
Yes, no, certainly not. Then with the changes in the language here, Suzie, maybe what does that change in the way in which the story is communicated by the singers who are taking this on, some of whom have never sung any Bach, certainly any Passions in their emerging careers?
Actually, that might be a good thing, like an easier thing, because if they've never sung it in German, we have an evangelist who's not done it in German, so he doesn't have to unlearn or relearn. So they're approaching it for the first time in a new language, which is sort of interesting. Although we did have one singer yesterday who sung for the last 2 weeks in French, and suddenly just broke into German, and somehow I've obviously had heard the original, and it just came out. So I think it's fascinating. I think that we are, especially with the French, as I've said, finding a score that has even altered some of the rhythms of Bach in order to fit the language. And we had to adapt to that, because at first it just seemed like, oh my goodness, this is so far away from how we would do it today. But actually, the more we've been working on it, the more we've found something to appreciate from, let's say, the sheer authenticity or the willingness to make this work in a language. They have actually done it quite well. The English, of course, is closer to us, but that creates problems as well,
Right.
because, each singer could bring a different version. If we had had more time, we could have said, why don't you try to write a translation in your own words, which would bring them closer than just doing something which, it's just something that one person thought of that could work.
Sure.
So I think we could, if we actually really perform this professionally, do much more work into the adaptation in the languages and really, really, cater each aria, have the singer involve themselves in the translation would be really fantastic.
Yeah, very interesting to consider sort of the future maybe iterations of this project. What sorts of things are you looking at when this project is completed here at Banff? What are the hopes, maybe without giving too much away, of course? What are maybe the hopes for how this project could leave the Banff Centre and maybe see the light of day somewhere else in Canada?
Yeah, one goal would be, though it's of course a big piece to mount, so we can't speak too confidently yet,
Right.
but would be to mount it for its 300th anniversary, right, in 2027. So that's on our mind.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to maybe ask this question of both of you, and I'll start with you, Suzie, to say, what does working on the Matthew Passion in this way, how does this influence the way that you will approach the work going forward in your career?
There's no question that having the opportunity to spend 2 weeks on 18 numbers of the St. Matthew is a luxury. It's not something you often get in a professional situation. You can do your own homework at home. But to spend days with other minds around, with Joel, with Alex, and the singers who are all bringing something of their own experience into this, it's extremely rich.
Right.
I will not look at those numbers. Now I know I have to look at all the other numbers, but I will not think of these particular pieces. I've just gone much deeper into them and understood them on other levels. But that's the shared experience that can happen in a situation like this. If in professional life we could have workshops for every big project, it would be absolutely fantastic.
Certainly. You're nodding a lot in agreement here, Alex.
Absolutely.
What sorts of things are you thinking about as you take this work away from the Banff Centre into the rest of your work that you do, not even just in the Passions, but the work that you do more broadly with Early Music Vancouver?
Yeah, to have that wonderful protected space to ask yourself, why am I doing what, right, is priceless. And I mean, as you all know, in whichever industry you are, also in the music industry, that space doesn't exist a lot. And I'm extremely grateful. I do spend a lot of time studying pieces, but to have the exchange with other minds, that's a different thing.
As you've been working with new singers on this, Suzie, and maybe we can end with this, as you've been working with the singers who are interacting with the St. Matthew Passion for the first time, what are you learning about what the St. Matthew Passion and maybe what the music of Bach means to the classical music community, to maybe even society writ large as we approach its 300th anniversary?
That's a very big question.
Yes, it is.
That's a difficult question. However, what I can say is that there are singers that we're working with who have not sung a lot of Bach. They've been doing more romantic opera, romantic repertoire. Each one of them loves Bach. Each one of them has shared that Baroque music even has a special place for them. So we were lucky in the way they were picked. And even though they sometimes just, it's like they're in front of a beautiful country or painting, and they have no idea necessarily how to appreciate, they just know they love it. And I think we're there to try just maybe open their ears or their eyes a little bit into how they can actually embrace it in a way that fits the musical language that's there. It's like learning a language. It's like learning Japanese or anything else. You know, you're gonna just, by doing it and by having people who've done a lot of it, hopefully we're sharing some of the things we've learned over the years, and that they, what we've noticed, which is really great, is that there are some big shifts happening in the way that people are thinking about it and singing it.
Yeah.
And that took the first 5-6 days to get there, and it's starting to really spread. And it's very exciting because you know that as they leave the Banff Centre, they will also have a completely different approach to Bach and in general some of that sacred music from the Baroque, right, of that 18th century. I mean, you know, it's a small niche because it's different for every era and every style, but they will have something to grab onto for Bach, which is probably going to be part of their lives. I mean, you can't be a singer without having to sing Bach cantata or a St. Matthew Passion or a St. John Passion. So it's been just beautiful to watch that happen.
Yeah, really looking forward to hearing this work performed here at the Banff Centre, and then to see how it radiates across the country. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Suzie LeBlanc and Alex Weimann, thank you so much for taking the time. All the best with the performance of the St. Matthew Passion, and we're looking forward to seeing what this does for performances with Early Music Vancouver, perhaps down the road.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Nolan.